24 of 1996. In the main, it mandates the Special Investigating Unit to investigate maladministration, malpractices, and corruption in general, so that we are able to investigate and make appropriate findings and make appropriate referrals for consequence management, which is your disciplinary process. Where appropriate, there's a reference or referral for criminal prosecutions to be executed. Those are referred to the National Prosecuting Authority, but there's also a very important process that is the niche of SIU, which is to institute civil proceedings. Those are instituted in the high courts to ensure that we recover what's due to the state.
Let me come to something else, Mr. Lekgetho. The other thing for me, how challenging is investigating an event that has a whole lot of processes around it?
Good afternoon to the listener at home. Investigation is just an open process. I think in most cases it just depends on the availability of documents and what is it that we're going to investigate. So normally in SIU what we do before we investigate, we start the process by scoping to see what are the allegations. In that way we determine what is it that is going to be investigated. And in that process we sit around and say, what are the allegations? It's corruption. Then we look at the element of corruption. What are the elements of corruption? In that way, we write what is it that needs to be obtained in order to prove that corruption has happened. After that, we give it to investigator who go out, collect that information, and come and sit down with lawyer, and the lawyer will assess to see whether the information obtained, does it really qualify for us to be able to make a referral to say corruption has occurred or not. But it's just a process that comes and it differs from allegation to allegation.
You're not just going on a fishing expedition?
No, we don't go on fishing expedition. There has to be allegation. SIU cannot investigate where there are no allegations. There has to be allegation referred to us. And I think quite importantly, allegations get referred to us. We assess. After assessing, we put together what we call a motivation for a proclamation. That motivation goes to the Department of Justice, whereby they look at it, and if they are happy that all the allegations are covered in line with the mandate of the SIU, they send it to the presidency, where the presidency also do their own groundwork, and after that they issue a proclamation. And after a proclamation has been issued, that's when the investigation can start. But the process is that there has been an allegation, and we have verified that the allegation is correct, so that there isn't any malicious investigation that is instituted against anybody else.
But if there's an allegation, I bring an allegation to you, I give you all the documents.
Right.
This is what has happened, and you found that there's the reason. Why do you need a proclamation to do your job?
Right. Mr. Vateza, you would know that as a creature of statute, SIU, we follow the legal prescripts, so to speak. I mean, you would know that this unit has existed, as I indicated. The Act itself notes that it was, a 1996 Act, and it's been the case since. It doesn't start now. So the legislation, by its very nature, requires that once we have ensured that the allegations fall within our scope and is allegations that had been assessed and verified, we then indicate. In this, what Mr. Lekgetho calls a motivation, we do indicate that there are sufficient grounds to investigate, right? And once we've done that, it goes through the process, and once it reaches the presidency as well, the president applies his mind based on what we've placed before him, and once he has applied his mind and is happy, then he signs off. So the requirement for a proclamation is a statutory requirement. So at the moment, and you might probably pick up on that later on, we are seeking ways and means of improving on our what we call, pre-proclamation process. And that process is an area which we have really observed that if we improve on it, we will be able
What really about the pre-proclamation?
Right. Let me expand on that. Pre-proclamation really just, it's a concept that says before the proclamation is issued, there's a work that needs to be done. At the moment, we can only commence formal investigation using SIU powers once the proclamation is signed.
I have information that you had started investigating the SABC even long before the proclamation was issued.
Right. We've picked that up in some of the media publications. It is incorrect. We have not at all started the investigation at SABC, formal investigation that is, before the proclamation was signed off and announced by the president. What happens, and this is important for us and the public to note, that once we receive the allegations, as Mr. Lekhat was saying, we go through a process, and this is what I'm calling pre-proclamation process. We verify, we assess those documents, we ensure that these allegations they really merit investigation. So in the process of doing that, this documentation, we receive them from state institutions. In this case, in your example, we receive this documentation from SABC. By the very nature of the work that we do, we have to ensure that when we assess and request documentation, we interact with the state institution, right? So the interaction with the state institution can be remotely, by phone, or by contact. And when we do that by contact and we happen to be at the state institution itself, that does not necessarily mean that we have commenced formal investigation. I think it's important for the public to note this.
Well, it's not the investigation many people are talking about. Mr. Lekhat, I watched a presentation by Mr. Mutibi in Parliament. Mm-hmm. One of the things he pointed to is that you lack a number of areas, especially as far as, correct me if I'm wrong, forensic investigation is concerned.
Do we lack?
Yes. I think he said we need more money. I don't know whether he wants more money.
Okay, I'm sure Mr. Lekhat can give it a bash, but when we presented in Parliament, I think the money part, we really didn't say we need more money, right? We didn't say that. I think the money part, if we were to narrow it down, could be possibly around when we presented on our financial statements, right? The finance part. And amongst others, when you look at the finance part, there is that area that deals with the status of our debt, right? So there we indicated that our debt level requires serious attention. And what we do with the state...
Apparently this debt is a legacy debt. It's debt that comes from way back when the organization was started. But there are also some, I noticed that there were also some traffic fines. If I drive an SABC car and I get a traffic fine, that fine is mine. Yes,
no, correct. We take the same approach. Unfortunately, when the vehicles are stopped and then fines are meted out, those are meted out in the name of SIU. But what we do internally, we obviously have processes
I just want to go to something
identify
else.
who was driving the car and make sure that the person responsible pays for the fine.
I don't want us to be kept by small little things. Right. I want to go to something else. Mm-hmm. How does your investigation work with organizations such as the Hawks, the police, and the public protector?
In terms of our legislation, we investigate. After investigating, we make referral to the National Prosecuting Authority. Then the National Prosecuting Authority will assess the evidence that we have presented to them. And thereafter, they will refer the matter to the police. And in that sense, that's when now the police, we come and work together with the police. And I also need to mention that there's a task team established called Anti-Corruption Task Team, where we are also part of it, where we work together with the police. And with regard to the public protector, whenever we apply for a proclamation, we receive allegation. Our act requires us to check whether is the allegation not investigated anywhere else. We check with the public protector, we check with the police, and we check with any investigating body to make sure whether they are not. And if they are not, that's when now we submit the motivation to the president that they can issue a proclamation. So in that way, and as when we investigate, there's interaction between us and the public protector. I think we'll have seen recently that in some of the investigation, public protector has referred the matter to the SIU that we must carry on, because the part that advocate spoke about is the issue of recovery. That's where we specialize, and if there's any investigation that needs a recovery, then we communicate, then we are able to take it further on that. But the working together is quite solid, and we communicate, and I can confirm that.
Let me go back to Advocate Mutimi. I just want to go, for instance, you can probably bring in what you wanted to say after this.
Right.
The other one is this issue of recovery. I read somewhere that when this unit was led by Judge Willem Heath, he said at some stage that, in the words of Judge Heath, that the unit is placing a great deal of emphasis on recovering money that belongs to the state. But in the case of somebody being killed, and you have to investigate, like we are going to do, like we are doing at the Herigwala District Municipality, you can't bring back a life.
Right. No, thanks for that. Look, our main purpose is to really investigate where the allegations are brought to us. If we find that there's corruption committed, we do then the necessary referral for actions to be taken. Right. Firstly, if we find that there's malpractice in the sense that there's been processes not followed and there's officials involved, we refer to the state institution and we follow up to ensure that the disciplinary processes are taking place. Where there is a finding, because remember we also apply the legal minds. Most of our investigators are legally qualified. We are able to assess whether the evidence presented to us can stand the test in a criminal court to be able to prove any offense beyond reasonable doubt. So the point I'm making is we do make referrals for criminal prosecutions. Where there is evidence that points to the commission of a crime, we do not sit back. We refer that to as required by the legislation, we refer that to the National Prosecuting Authority and ensure that we assist them to put through the the prosecution process. The point I wanted to make, which Mr. Lekgetho touched on, it's the ACTT, which is an acronym for Anti-Corruption Task Team.
Yes.
This is a task team which has been put together and constituted by various law enforcement agencies and other departments in government. That task team has been set up as a subcommittee of the interministerial task team, interministerial committee, which is then overseeing. So the point I'm trying to make is that if you read through our National Development Plan, there's a chapter there specifically dealing with anti-corruption measures. That chapter, amongst others, emphasizes that as a country we have adopted a multi-agency approach. And I think, to my mind, if I, having observed how is it that we do work, this overlaps, to ensuring that we don't duplicate.
In other words, how do you avoid, maybe my apologies
yes.
for interrupting you, how do you avoid a situation where all of these agencies that are fighting corruption are not falling over each other, they're tripping each other as they investigate, because there are too many of them in the way?
Yes, that's the point I wanted to make, is that, and I think my colleague Mr. Lekgetho hinted on, our legislation specifically says, if the matter can best be, if we are of the view that the matter can be dealt with best by the public protector, then we have to refer. The Public Protectors Act has a similar provision than the other way around, and we do interact. We do have a memorandum of understanding with the public protector where we come together on frequent occasions to ensure that we cut out all these duplications. We don't run into each other, to use your terminology. The same with the Hawks and SAPS in general. We ensure that when an allegation is received by us, we do checks in terms of our process. If it's then already been dealt with by the SAPS or the Hawks in particular, we then allow that process. We avoid duplication, just to ensure that we don't confuse the processes and the public.
What, in your view, you can both answer this question, what in your view causes corruption? In other words, how would you define corruption?
Look, corruption is a wide concept. I mean, if you look at the legislation defining corruption, which is the Prevention and Combating of Corrupt Activities Act, there's a whole section there that deals with the definition of corruption, right? If you hold a position of authority, or you hold any position in the state institution or anywhere. By the way, we don't only focus on state institutions or government or public sector per se. We do also focus on the private sector. So you could be holding this position in both sectors, public and private. Then you utilize or use your position to influence processes in such a manner that you derive a benefit for yourself or anybody related to you or anybody associated to you. Then in that way, that act, if investigated and found that is the case, it falls within the definition of corruption. So as I said, it's quite a wide concept, but when we do investigations, we do obviously refer to that definition in the legislation.
Well, if you'd like to join us in today's discussion, you can call us on 011 714 5497 5498. I'm told we've got a caller on the line. Good afternoon and welcome to Right and Recourse.
Good afternoon, Dumile. I wanted to know about communal property associations. They are the product of government, and unfortunately they are being used or they've been turned into spaza shops by the executives of the beneficiaries. And when we say there are corruptions in those CPAs, it would appear that we are not getting help by institutions like the CIOs. My question is, do they investigate corruption within CPAs? And if not, why not?
Well, yes, that's the question. The CPAs, I think it's something that you refer to, that you are investigating land reform and you refer around that area. What are you investigating actually there?
Right. Thanks for the question from the public participant out there. We do investigate those matters. In the rural space, which we had a proclamation signed off, the main focus, at least in this instance, was around the grants which were given for land restitution, where in the main, to refer back to that definition of corruption, where we have made various findings, finding that there has been misrepresentations or grants being given to people who are really not qualifying, and we have made that finding. We have made the referrals to the department, and we are satisfied as we speak today that the actions are being taken against those individuals. In fact, you would have followed that the Ministry of Land and Rural Development, in conjunction with the NPA and SIU, there was a press conference held in Cape Town where land, as a result of SIU investigations, the land that was found to have been allocated fraudulently with misrepresentation was returned, obviously after legal processes was followed, and that land was given back to the rightful owners. So in terms of the CTAs, we would really if there are any, if there are any allegations.
I think he was saying CPA, Communal Property Association.
CPAs. Yeah. Thank you for that correction. If there are any allegations against any CPAs, we would obviously have to, unpack those allegations, assess them. If it's a CPA, if it's an entity within a particular department, then we would obviously have to work with that department to ensure that we follow up on those allegations. At the end of this process, I'm hoping we would be able to be given that opportunity where we give out our contact number, where the listener or the viewer at home can contact us. We are available to make sure that we follow up on any of the allegations that he may have.
And I wanted to go to a break, but let's take this call from Boy from Davidton, and after that we'll go to a break and then we'll answer his question when he comes back. Good afternoon, Boy.
Hi, Dumi, how are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
Fine, thanks, man. This topic is quite very interesting. This right corruption in the country. So I would like to know, there are things like mostly the government departments. There's a lot of this corruption, especially maybe in the traffic section. We would like to know, where can we report such incidents? Are there any outlets where we can lodge our complaints in cases like that?
Well, thank you very much, Boy. I think
the transport department.
Thank you very much. I think this is another issue, Advocate, you mentioned. But first, let's go to a break, and then we can answer the question when we come back.
Thank you.
Okay. If you'd like to join us like Boy, you can always call us on 011 714 5497 or 5498. Stay with us.
Jumbo Africa, welcome to the newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin. I'm Kendall Makamara.
Let us build our continent brick by brick, stone by stone, until we achieve.
Plus, I'd asked the court to review and cancel the contract after adverse findings by both the Auditor General as well as the Public Protector.
Well, Christianity is under attack globally. It has been from the beginning of time.
Get all the dominating stories locally and globally on Newsroom every Monday to Friday from 9 a.m.
Welcome back to Right and Recourse as we discuss the Special Investigating Unit. First of all, Mr. Advocate Mutivi, the question from Boy about corruption in the traffic police.
Space. All right. Now, it's quite a relevant question, because I say relevant in the sense that SIU has done work in this regard before. We have done work under the Department of Transport. In that investigation, there were allegations, various allegations, but to be specific to the viewer, SIU looked at the fraudulent licenses and some other areas where the testing areas, the corruption that's happening in that space.
The testing center.
The testing centers. We have concluded the report, and the report has been submitted to the President. But I think it's important for the public to note that in the process of investigating, even long before we submit the report to the President, simply because we want action to be taken and taken there and there, we have referred in the process to the Department of Transport, where there's quite a number of driver's licenses that were required to be cancelled, and we have referred that to the various MECs. Because this is the competency of the provincial MECs. So there's been very good outcome out of that. But of importance is to note that recently our work has really not stopped where we have submitted the report on the transport and so on. We do follow up on whether those referrals have been actioned. But lately we have been in interaction with the Road Traffic Management Corporation, called RTMC. We've been in discussion with them because we've received new allegations around falsified permits, still other allegations coming in around falsified fraudulent licenses. So we are at the stage now where we could be having the proclamation signed off at any point. So once that proclamation is signed, in line with what I've said before, we'll then kick off a similar investigation, but with more focus areas.
Let me go to something else. My apology,
yes.
Advocate. If, for instance, you do all this work, Mr. Lekgeto, you put all this energy into investigating, and each time Mr. Mutibi he says the report is with the president, the report is, I hear he says he refers, that you refer to other investigating unit and to the NPA. But I believe if the report, if a directive comes from the president saying this thing so-and-so needs to be taken to court, this thing must be investigated further by the NPA, that will hold water, that will be stronger, but because the NPA can sit on the report and do nothing.
Like I indicated earlier, that we're working together with NPA, and as and when we make a referral, we make sure that we follow. And I think what we need to emphasize is that we do have a MOU with NPA, so as to manage the process of referral, so that we can able to know when the referral is made, how long does it take for them to process it and to send it to the next level. So in that way, we are able to follow up to make sure that whatever referral we made is being followed up. And remember, in most cases, when we make this, I think it's an issue where there's evidence. There's a clear-cut evidence, and the only thing that NPA does is just to assess and able to make sure that
whether the case is winnable.
I guess so. It's within their mandate to do their own scope. Then, in most cases, we work with the police, and once the case is with the police, we drive it, and we make sure that our member assists the police, because it's the investigation that we have started from the beginning. We know it all, and therefore we are able to assist. And I think that's also coupled with the disciplinary. If we refer disciplinary to the department,
disciplinary of civil servants,
yes. We make sure that our member makes them available so that they can go and testify. And what we give to the department, we give them a file, completed file, where what they do is just for them to implement the disciplinary. It's not for them to
Let's take this call from Sipho from Soweto. I know you wanted to come in there. Sipho, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Good afternoon, Dr. Matez. How are you?
Oh, thanks. How are you?
Thanks. Dr. Matez, where do we report insurance ombudsman?
You want to report the insurance ombudsman?
Dr. Matez, some years back, insurance company Metropolitan came to me at work. I joined. Now they are coming with all these excuses. Now the ombudsman is taking their sides. Now I don't know, because the ombudsman should be fair, should be neutral. But now this one is on their side.
Sipho, quickly, so if I can respond to that question, we will put up a number on the screen, the number of the Special Investigating Unit that you can call anytime. Your name won't be disclosed, to remain anonymous, and they will deal with you. They will keep your name anonymous. Let me come to Advocate Mutibi. Advocate Mutibi.
Yes.
If the purpose of the SIU legislation, as the legislation says, is defined as, I quote, to provide the establishment of the special investigating units for the purposes of investigating serious malpractices of maladministration in connection with administration of state institutions, yes, state assets and public money, as well as any conduct which may seriously harm the public's interest. Why have we not seen an investigation into the widely reported misdemeanor at Eskom, at Transnet, at SAA and Petro SA, to some extent at the SABC?
Right. SIU has done an investigation before under a different proclamation at SABC. And we have submitted the report as required by the legislation. But in that investigation,
you mentioned you say the investigation of 2009, 2010.
Yes, yeah, it dates back to the time. But I want to respond specifically to your question that there is investigations being done based on the allegations that were received, specifically at SABC. We have commenced our investigation, but even before, there was a proclamation which was issued focusing on specific allegations. We completed that investigation with specific outcomes, and we have seen good results coming out of that.
But that investigation, wait a moment, Mr. My apologies. That investigation actually said certain people must be prosecuted, and none of those people were prosecuted.
Right. I think it's important to note that what my colleague has indicated, that our legislation requires us to refer matters to the NPA, but that's not where we end. We ensure that we follow up with the NPA so that all of us are satisfied that the necessary actions are taken. I don't have the report specifically with me now, but I mean, we can go up, we can go back and make sure that we follow up. In fact, it's part of the list that we will be perusing with the NPA very soon.
In preparation for this investigation.
To ensure that all of those actions that were referred to them are actioned. So it's going to be an ongoing monitoring process following on our signature of the Memorandum of Understanding with them.
How different is this investigation that you are going to undertake now from the one you undertook in 2009, 2010?
Some elements are similar, but I mean, they all look at maladministration, malpractice, and yes, corruption. So the focus is on procurement processes for this investigation that we are currently conducting. But yes, without going into detail, simply because we can't really publicize our investigation to date, we keep on receiving allegations in the process, right? And some allegations still point to irregularities in procurement mainly. But we will also be looking at malpractices relevant to the employment space, not necessarily procurement. But if there's other allegations, we do receive them, yes, and go through them, and then ensure that they are covered by our investigation. It's important to note that the proclamation would have been specific in terms of focus areas, what we do in terms of our business and methodology. Once new allegations come in, we do not wait until we finish this investigation. Already the teams are looking at those new allegations that we receive in the process. If there's a requirement, firstly, if they are within the current scope, we will continue and investigate them. If they are outside of the scope, because we are a creature of statute, we do not want to act outside of the law. We then would put a request or a motivation to ensure that we amend or extend the proclamation.
What about Eskom, Transnet, and Petro SA? I know Petro SA lost about 14 billion rand.
Right. On the Eskom side, similar report or similar comment. We've done investigation at Eskom before. And there's been quite a significant number of referrals there for disciplinary process, and I know that actions have been taken, particularly around where there's been conflict of interest, and these in the main have been sort of in the procurement space where there has been no checks and balances. People have not declared their interest in doing business with the state and so on. So that's the conflict of interest part, right? So we've made referrals and we've followed up to
what
make
about fraudulent activity?
Yes, in the main, in the previous report, there has been malpractice in the space of conflict of interest. We at that time did not pick up any fraudulent, criminal fraudulent activities. But indeed, had there been any indication that there were fraudulent activities, we would have taken the action. at the moment, the public publications that have been going out there and saying, SIU is about to commence an investigation in ESCOM. We've been in interaction with the Department of Public Enterprise. We have interacted with the officials.
The minister has made reference to that she's in contact with you.
Yes, I can confirm that. We've been in contact with the minister and with the officials, the DG in particular, to ensure that we start the process and make sure that it progresses without delay. And that's to look back to my initial comments, is that we do a lot of work during the pre-proclamation space. There was a lot of documentation, Mr. Matezo, that we had to look at, and it's complex contracts. Yes. So we had to make sure that we go through them and then develop a proclamation, write out a proclamation, which we can then put through the process. That's happening as we speak.
Mr. Lekgetho, there was a suggestion that I picked up from Judge Willem Heath, that because you have these multidisciplinary investigating units, the Hawks, the SIU, the NPA, the police. Yep. There should be these investigations should take place simultaneously. Do you agree with that? Is that not the case? Should that not be the case? So that if the NPA knows this is our area, they go ahead and they investigate their area.
I think particularly when referred to NPA, remember we've got different mandate. NPA can only act once they receive something from us to say, here's an evidence of criminality, you must carry it forth. So in a way, they cannot start in the same time. There's somewhere where somebody needs to start the process. And once the process starts, that's where the process now needs to go on to flow from one department to another. For example, it's us, we investigate. Once we find across any criminality, we refer to NPA. NPA do what they need to do, then they rope in the police. Then once the police come in, then the investigation is going. Until now, it goes to the court and until the case is finalized. So it's quite a process that goes on, and everybody has a role in between.
Can I just comment, Mr. Matezo, just on that, just to pick up on what my colleague is saying. Remember, there's this concept, and it comes way back. It's even the approach in some of the European jurisdictions, and we found that it works. The so-called prosecution-assisted investigations, right? In our forensic investigations as well, we do have an integrated approach where you've got forensic lawyers working with forensic investigations, right? So we do place a premium on that so that we don't allow the investigators to proceed and then come back only then and engage the lawyers, right? So in the broader investigation space, Hawks and the NPA, there's a similar collaboration. And that collaboration really ensures that we take matters to conclusion comprehensively on an integrated approach so that there is no delays, and this, in my view, has really helped all of us, all the agencies. But I still say we need to also ensure that there is no unnecessary duplication. Right. We can investigate at the same time, but we need to make sure that the focus areas are defined.
Have these proclamations been challenged in court?
I'm not sure the extent to which that question refers, but once a proclamation is issued, it becomes a proclamation. I don't recall that a proclamation has been challenged in court. However, let me make this point that during the investigations, if there's any party who feels that his rights has been prejudiced in a way, then he or she has got every right to invoke the judicial process. We've had instances where we've been challenged. Our investigation outcomes have been challenged in court, and yes, we take the process through, we put together the evidence and present to the courts, where the courts then makes pronouncements. Yeah.
Mr. Lekgetho, obviously when you investigate, you need people to give you the evidence.
Yes.
And interview people. How protected are those people that you get the evidence from? Are they protected? Say if you come to the SABC tomorrow, you say, we're starting the investigation. I'm looking for so-and-so, so you'll contact the people. Are those people protected from victimization?
The people are protected. Remember, when we come to SABC and we come and interview somebody else, we come to you because you are responsible, you are a government official, and you are in charge of certain department, and it's within your responsibility that that information is within your space. So in that way, we come and interview and get information from you. And in a way, you are protected because there's a Whistleblower Protection Act which says that, and there's no way that after we interview you, we'll go back to management and tell them, this is what you say. This is not how we work. We get our information based on what we want, and we present it as the information from the state institution. We make sure that a member within the institution are not really victimized based on the information that is given to us. We follow up, we make sure that they don't. I think there hasn't been any instances that I'm aware where a member gave information to SIU and as a result they were victimized, because we act within the law. And whoever will be victimizing people based on our process will be contravening our law.
Yeah. Just to pick up on that, Mr. Mateza, if you would allow, we have been on an outreach program where we reach out to government officials, government, state institutions, public, and business. We call those, stakeholder engagements. And then there's a whole number of stakeholders that attend, including government and private. In many instances, that question does come up. And it's important to note that what my colleague refers to is regulated by the Protected Disclosures Act. And that act is very clear to say anyone who has, it's colloquially referred to as whistleblowers, any whistleblower who has blown a whistle, so to speak, and has a sense that he or she will be prejudiced, and we become aware, we encourage those people who have given us allegations or evidence to notify us, so that we can ensure that the processes as provided by the Protected Disclosures Act are then invoked, so that we provide the necessary protection. We can assure the public out there that once allegations are reported and we have got an indication that anyone is threatened because of that, that is unacceptable, and we will ensure that the legal process kicks in.
Silas from Northwest, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Hello, how are you, Mr. Mateza?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm all right. I just want to ask from Mr. Mathieu, if I have a case which has already been in court, but the outcome of the case I was not satisfied, what must I do?
I didn't get that question. I don't know whether any of you have got a... Could you repeat very quickly, Silas?
Yes, I just want to ask you, Mr. Motivi, if I have a matter which has been in court. So the outcome, I was not satisfied by the outcome of the case. So I want to know from him, what must I do?
Okay. All right, yes, I think you heard that question.
Yeah, for that, firstly, without assuming that it's a matter that SIU was looking at.
Without assuming that it's a matter that's before court now.
That's right, exactly. But we'll deal with it in terms of the legal provisions. Anybody who goes to court, be it small claims court, be it magistrates court, high court, there's sort of various processes. The one could be a civil process, the one could be a criminal process. So the question by the viewer is, if I have been to court either as a respondent or as an applicant and I am unhappy, what do I do? There are provisions. If, for example, if it's the criminal process and the outcome is the outcome, let's say you are a complainant right? And the outcome of the process that you are unhappy about. There are avenues. You could engage the public prosecutor at any court that you have instituted that matter, make sure that they are aware, and then they can explain the outcome and how is it that if the verdict was not guilty or guilty, and they can explain to you how is it that it has come to that. You've had instances where the NPA also takes matters on appeal simply because there has been unhappiness around some of the outcomes. So the public is not helpless in terms of outcomes. In the civil court, if you are not happy, then there are appeal processes or review processes. So assuming that you would have a legal representation, in cases where there's no legal representation, where you are indigenous, that is not affording civil process, there's legal aid that you can approach, and in that sense, you get help.
I just want to go back to something else. Both of you can answer because I'm told we're quickly running out of time. Okay. The Act makes provision for tribunals, as you said at the beginning. I don't know who wants to take that one, where it looks like that has not been done. One of the other questions that is being whispered in my ear is what if a member, it's something we spoke about in our introduction, what if a member of the executive has to be investigated? Are we going to get the proclamation?
Right. The SIU Act is titled Special Investigating Unit and Special Tribunals Act. Right? The Special Tribunals part, which is your question, Mr. Mateza, the tribunals part is really the part that envisages that there would be a special tribunal, you could call it a special court, that would deal with matters that emanate from SIU investigations. In this case, it's civil proceedings, right? The civil proceedings that would then require us to go to court to ensure that we recover the assets or the monies that are due to the state. So we are at the stage now where we have approached the Ministry and the Department of Justice that, and we have identified that most of the delays in recovering the assets and monies to the state based on our civil process, they are delayed simply because we also queue with the litigants in ordinary courts. But we want to use this provision of the legislation because it's there for a purpose. And the purpose is to ensure that we fast-track the civil litigation and civil recoveries. So we would want to re-establish that special tribunal. There's administrative process that needs to happen. So we are working in collaboration with the Department of Justice. We are really at an advanced stage. There are processes where the tribunal president has to be appointed, and once the tribunal president is appointed and the necessary budget has been allocated, we should be able to see that special tribunal re-established. This is going to be a very important area to ensure that we really make the impact that's required, and that impact is to ensure that we recover the lost monies from anyone who would have benefited.
But let's take this call from Joseph from Northwest. Joseph, good afternoon and welcome to Rights and Recourse.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thanks. How are you?
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Joseph. Go ahead and make it quickly. We're running out of time.
Oh, yes, sir. I just want to ask those two gentlemen only two questions. If they're only dealing with the problems on the maybe the same area like Johannesburg or Pretoria or KwaZulu-Natal only. Because here in Northwest, we had the issue of commissions, that is Mafirika commissions. And the second commission was the Maluleka commission. And the third one was that one of CPA, because I could hear those gentlemen are talking about the CPAs. We have got the CPAs at Bakatela, which was stated in 2005. But now the department he doesn't want to recognize that CPA. I don't know if they know about it. Maybe they can help us.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Thank you very much. Joseph's question, I think you heard it.
Yes.
Are you concentrating on Johannesburg, Pretoria, and KwaZulu-Natal and forgetting the Northwest?
Not at all. Northwest is pretty much part of the geographical area. We cover the whole country.
By the way, you didn't answer my last question. What if it is a member of the executive who has to be investigated? Are you going to get the proclamation?
Thanks for reminding me that. On that question, if we receive allegations affecting every state institution, which within those institutions could be affecting anybody in that institution, be it the accounting officer, accounting authority, if it does become the executive authority, we don't turn down the allegations simply because they point to executive authorities. We will receive those allegations. We will then treat them like we treat any other allegation. So to put you at ease and also make sure that the public is at ease when we receive allegation that affects.
Can these proclamations be abused?
Not at all. Not at all. We have checks and balances. This is a legally prescribed process. We ensure that we follow that process to the letter. So we ensure that there is no abuse by any person or by any legal entity in our investigations.
Mr. Lekgaito, final word, about 30 seconds, I'm sorry.
Thank you for the opportunity, and I hope we've tried to educate members about the work of SIU, and they must continue to refer a matter to SIU.
Mr. Lekgaito, Advocate Mutibi, thank you very much for your time. I think we'll continue the discussion. There are many questions which are asked that many people wanted asked. In a paper titled Independence of South Africa's Anti-Corruption Architecture by Hamadziripi Tamukamoyo, he says, and I quote, robust political will is required to run an honest government, while naming and shaming convicted public servants of fining construction companies for bid rigging may send a signal that corruption is unacceptable. The country's political leadership has to build on this by ensuring that political and business elites and those who are connected to them are transparently and fairly held accountable for any alleged acts of fraud and corruption. This has been Right and Recourse. This program is the views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of the SABC or Right and Recourse. This program is repeated at 5 on Monday morning. From all of us in the studio, thank you to our guests and goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.